how do you see the future of education and AI?
Yeah, I think you made a great point there about AI being able to take on some tasks that then free us up to, whether it's time freedom or whether it's mental freedom or whatever it might be, free us up to connect and to build communities and to spend time with each other. I think that education, to be honest, really needs a reform.
You're listening to the Streamline Success Show. I'm your host, Dagmar Schult. In this podcast, we talk about how AI and automation can help busy coaches like you simplify their online businesses. We share practical advice that you can start using immediately. Welcome to today's episode. I'm your host, Dagmar Schult, and today I have a truly special guest with me, Rob Soul. Rob is a visionary transforming the way kids learn and grow through the game of chess, blending strategic thinking and personal development in a unique way. In this episode, we'll explore how Rob integrates AI into education, making learning even more effective and engaging. So get ready to be inspired by Rob. Welcome to the show, Rob.
Thank you so much, Dagmar. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to talking to you today.
Yes, me too. First of all, can you just share a little bit about your journey and what inspired you to actually combine chess with personal growth for kids?
Yeah, and I really appreciate the kind intro. I don't know that I've ever been called a visionary except by myself. So that was a great thing to hear. I did get involved in personal growth and personal development in college back in the 1990s. I discovered at a bookstore Anthony Robbins' book, Unlimited Power. And I flipped through it a little bit and thought, this is interesting stuff. And I bought it that day and read it, and I still own it. And it's something I've read numerous times. I've been a Tony Robbins fan ever since and done several events. And I've been purchased his DVDs and CDs and things off of infomercials and all that over the years. Personal growth has been a thing for me ever since then. And I've gotten into a lot of other authors and a lot of other parts of the genre. But it's always been something that to me is an important part of my life. An important part to me of life is growing and getting better as people, right? And evolving.
Right.
And those are tools that can help with that and accelerate the process. And that's actually one of the interesting things about his teachings in particular that I picked up was the idea of modeling and finding someone who's successful already in an endeavor that you're interested in and then figuring out what they did and doing the same things, right? That's something that I've spent a lot of my life doing. And it was, again, some people never get into any of that. Some people get into it at a young age like I did. I was 19. I don't know how young that is compared to most people, but I think many people discover the ideas and things in maybe their 20s or 30s. And a lot of people out of frustration. That's how I found it was I was frustrated and I was in college and really didn't have much of a plan or a direction. I didn't want to be there. I, instead of going to class, would spend 8 hours a day in the basement of my apartment complex practicing the guitar and getting better at playing and teaching myself the guitar. And I didn't last very long in college that first time around. But happy to say I went back eventually and got my degree. And personal growth and personal development was part of that. Being able to understand that what you've done or what you've been for your whole life is not what you are now. You can change that. You can rewrite the rest of your chapters of your life, so to speak. And it was one of those things where I decided, hey, I'm finally ready to go back. I finally feel some sense of direction. And so personal growth is something that helped me find that. And I thought, what a great thing to be able to teach to kids at a young age in a way that they can understand it. So
that is cool. So actually, I was really late with that. So I found Tony Robbins in around 2000, I think. I read the book that you talked about. And actually, the first time I read it, I didn't get a lot out of it. I thought it's manipulative. And then a friend of mine came and she said, Tony is coming to London. So I'm in Munich and London is not so far away. I thought, no, at first I said I will not come. Actually, that was who I was at that time.
Yeah.
And she backed me, and I said, no, I don't want to. And then she said, we are going to do a fire walk. And I said, a fire walk? I have to go there. And she said, you're crazy. Tony Robbins is coming and you go because of the fire walk. And I said, yes, because when I do the fire walk, I'm actually be convinced that I can do what my mind is up to. So that was the reason that I was going, actually. And then the funny story, I went in 2004 with her, and it was in October. It was very cold, really icy, and it was raining cats and dogs
Oh,
all day. And then we had to put our shoes off and stay there in the freezing cold and waiting for our turn because there were 22,000 people there. I don't know.
oh my
So I
gosh.
was standing there for an hour and I couldn't feel my feet anymore. And
Oh,
after that, I thought I could not burn myself because my feet were just not feeling anything. And that was what my mind was telling me. And so I did it again in 2005 in spring. That was so funny. Yeah, but then that was the first time I really learned about personal growth. And I never stopped since then. So
yeah.
I love that you do this with kids so that they get it a little bit earlier than me.
Yeah, it's a fascinating subject and it has a lot of elements to it, a lot of different little niches, I guess you could say, within the overall niche. And there's a lot of different paths and a lot of different ways to go with it. But again, I've opened myself up to a lot of different authors and a lot of different speakers, and I've been to a lot of events since. And so being able to synthesize that information and assimilate it is what enabled me to better present it to kids. So it's not just a one-sided thing. It's sort of an amalgamation of a lot of different ideas that I put together. And speaking of chess, that is a game that traditionally has been something that a lot of people connect with cognitive ability. And it does definitely connects well with cognitive ability. There's no doubt about it. But there's a lot of other things that you can learn through chess. And, there's a lot of lessons within it if you are able to stick them in there, I guess, for lack of a better term. And so, I have been playing chess for a long time in my life. And when I decided to teach chess, I actually began teaching with a couple of other companies before I formed my own. And those companies left me dissatisfied. There was one that it seemed that the only thing they really felt like chess was good for was discipline. And so the room was so silent that you could hear a pin drop. And if any student ever made a noise at all, they were immediately shushed. And it didn't look like anybody was having any fun at all in there. And learning needs to be fun for kids, especially. And chess is a game. Let's make it fun, guys. Come on. And then following that, I went to a different company that didn't have a whole lot of structure. And so there wasn't really a way to teach anything with any kind of coherence in any sort of way that the kids could get it. We would show up to teach our class, and 5 minutes before the class was supposed to start, the lead instructor would come hustling over with a stack of papers and hand them out to the different teachers. And that's what we were teaching that day. So you didn't, as a stronger chess player, you can look at a sheet like that and immediately go, okay, this is what I'm teaching, and it's okay, I can do that, but I'm not able to impart any additional wisdom into it. I'm not able to help the kids grow at all. And compounded with the fact that the sheets didn't have anything to do with each other one week to another. It was like they just took a random page out of a chess manual and photocopied it at the Kinko's and then ran down and handed it to us. So both of those situations left me feeling a little empty. And that isn't how I thought chess should be taught. So I wanted to create a better mousetrap, and that's how Kids in Chess was born.
Cool. I love that. So, and how actually, can you expand a little bit how you bring these personal development lessons into the chess curriculum, so to say?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So chess is, again, a game that has a lot of thinking involved, of course, but the main tenet of, I guess, personal growth in general is that our thoughts are really what kind of determine everything, right? And our thoughts determine our behaviors, and our behaviors determine our results. In a nutshell,
Right.
it's the short version. And if our thoughts are the main thing, then yes, chess is a thinking game, but you can take the thinking and you can apply it to a lot of different scenarios, a lot of different situations in your life, if you are willing to do right. And kids, they have this abundant desire to learn, and they
Yeah.
just love to soak things up and learn new things. And so what I did when I created my lessons is I decided that I'm going to teach this stuff as chess, of course, and as a game. But when I have little opportunities, like, for instance, calculating several moves ahead, then that gives me an opportunity to talk about how in life you can choose from 2 or 3 different paths by projecting yourself forward and figuring out which is this path likely to get me where I want to go, or is this one, or is this other one here? And then, of course, when you calculate in chess, a lot of times you'll go 3 or 4 moves deep, and the opponent will make a different move that you weren't expecting on move 2. So now everything you just calculated is out the window, and you have to recalculate. And of course, that's part of life too, right? Is we get down a road that we think is going to be the right one, and something happens, and we have to change course a little, right? So these are little ways that I incorporate these kinds of lessons. But the biggest kind of overarching thing that I do is each day when we sit down in class, before we start class, we read aloud what I call the Kids in Chess Decree, which is 7 pillars of my program that I created and put on a laminated card. Every student gets one. We all read along. And those things are, for instance, things like believing in yourself. I believe in myself is the very first statement on it. I always try my hardest. I never give up. I always play fair. Things that are important to think of really whenever we do anything. And so that's what I'm getting at when we do it. And then we'll talk in depth about one or the other every once in a while as well. I'll talk for a couple of minutes, or I'll ask somebody, what does that mean to you? And we'll take that and talk about it in chess terms, and then also in a broader sense in terms of using those kinds of thought processes and those kinds of concepts in life as well.
I love that. Oh, that's so cool. Coming back to our topic is a little bit about AI. And of course, the chess computers are AI computers. That's what we're talking about. So what or how does AI contribute to the other part? So to the strategical thinking, to the cognitive mind? How does it contribute?
Yeah, and you mentioned it, AI and chess are very closely linked. In fact, the first real strides that were made in AI came through the world of chess. In 1996, there was a very famous match between the world champion at the time, Garry Kasparov, and an IBM supercomputer that was called Deep Blue. And never before had a chess computer beaten a human being, at least the top human beings, somebody who's the world champion, for instance, or a grandmaster. And so they set up this 6-game match, and the computer actually won the first game against Kasparov. And that was the first time under tournament conditions that a computer AI machine had beaten a human, again, a super strong human, a grandmaster, or in this case, the world champion. So that was historic in itself. But then Kasparov went back to the war room and came back and won against that machine in 1996. He won the match pretty clear, 4-2 in the 6 games. And so that's a pretty clear score when you're having a one-on-one match. And so the IBM team then went back to their war room and challenged him to a rematch a year later in 1997. And they had really made it into a dynamite opponent by then. And so it actually won the rematch in 1997. And the final game, very interestingly, the match was tied at 2.5 each going into the final game. And Kasparov played a particular opening that's pretty well known as a solid opening. And the computer actually sacrificed a piece to destroy his defense. And he wasn't expecting that. And the game was the shortest of all of the whole match. It only went 19 moves, and Kasparov resigned. And the computer won the match, 3.5 to 2.5. And that advent, that the reason Kasparov said after the match that he didn't expect that sacrifice. He knew it was part of the possibilities in the opening, of course, that he was playing, but he didn't expect that sacrifice because it's not something a computer would do. A computer typically only sacrifices for a very tangible gain. This was more of an abstract. It was to destroy the defense and then 15, 20 moves down the line, be able to come in and make up for it. And that's not something a computer had ever done before. And so he was surprised by it and realized he was in trouble and resigned. And that was a big turning point in the world of AI, was, whoa, now we've developed AI to the point that in a supremely intellectual task like chess, it now has the ability to think like a human player and to defeat one of the strongest human players really in history. A lot of chess aficionados consider Kasparov to be one of the best players ever, if not the best, the GOAT, as they say. And so that was a very interesting turning point when it comes to AI. And then, of course, the applications of AI since have just mushroomed into all kinds of things. And now we have AI accessible to everybody in the last few years here with things like ChatGPT. And AI has come a long way since the middle 1990s there, and really since the 70s when they started working on ideas like that. And possibly even as far back as the 60s, there were probably computer scientists working on things like that. So they're very closely connected. And the way AI can be used in my personal use with my chess company itself is I can use it to enhance my lessons and find little areas that could use improvement in terms of what I'm teaching and how I'm teaching it. Of course, it is able to analyze very quickly moves and games and things so that when a couple of students play a game in my class, then I can quickly enter that into an AI machine and it can recommend immediately, hey, here's where you went wrong and this is what you should have done differently. And then we can talk about that and we can start to understand that and we can discuss it as a group and figure out, okay, well, why do you think this is the right move? Why do you think the computer recommended this in this case? Which is just a fascinating use of it to be able to do that right in real time there with the kids in the class.
Yeah, that is really amazing. Yeah, you couldn't do that before.
No,
Um,
definitely not. Chess analysis would take hours. You'd go home and you'd look over the game, and then maybe you don't even find the best move. You try. The computer can, in seconds, just come right up with it and a full-on analysis of all the moves that would follow as the reason why it's the best move. So, yeah,
Well,
it's really interesting.
yeah, and I remember last time you talked, you told me how the possibilities of moves grow exponentially, and that really impressed me. Can you tell that to my audience? Because I think
Yes,
that's very interesting.
absolutely. Yeah, that the possibilities really mushroom quickly. And that was one of the flaws with AI chess machines for a long time. And what really turned the corner with them is what a chess machine used to have to do is analyze a move in terms of every single possibility. So for instance, if there were 38 moves that the machine had to choose from, it would have to examine all 38 of those as far as it possibly could within a reasonable amount of time. And of course, each of those 38 choices, then, let's say after it makes this one here, now the human opponent that it's playing against has 42 choices. Those all have to be analyzed one by one. And then the next move the computer would consider, maybe that one results in 27 choices by the human. So there's just these massive amounts of tree branches, I guess you'd call them, that just come from trying to analyze one move. And so what computers used to have to do was just shuffle through all that stuff and cycle through it all and try and process all of it. They have since trained computers to be able to, like humans do, pare it down very quickly to a few reasonable moves. And it'll still put on the back burner some of those moves that don't look reasonable because that's how it can surprise you. Eventually, it might find out that one of those is a good idea. But the main moves, just like a human being, a grandmaster, his strength is in his pattern recognition, right? And in his ability to recognize quickly that of those 38 moves, 33 of them are garbage. And I don't even need to consider those right away. So now I'm down to 5 moves, yeah? And so this is what they've trained computers to be able to do now. But the fascinating thing that a lot of people are blown away by, and I was blown away by this number the first time I saw it too, in just the first 10 moves of a chess game, and most of them go 30, 40, even 50 moves. Some of them go close to 100 or even more.
Wow.
In just the first 10 moves, there are 159 quintillion possible positions between
Such a crazy number.
It is. And if you look at it, it's 159, and I think it's 18 zeros. And I put it up on the board for my students when we talk about this too, so they can see the enormity of the number, because quintillion doesn't mean a lot to your average 8-year-old. But when they see the number with a whole bunch of zeros on the end, they see how big a number it is. And then I point out, okay, this is where a million would be, and we're way over here, and then all these zeros. So it really gets the impression, gets the point across. But 159 quintillion possibilities in just the first 10 moves between the two players. And clearly there isn't any way that a human being could possibly memorize all of that information. You can't even look at that much in your lifetime. So yeah, it's nearly an infinite game, which is why even the best human chess players, nobody's ever known everything there is to know about chess. The best players in the world, the current world champion and every one of them before him, they don't know everything there is to know about chess, but they know a lot. They know a whole lot about it. And it's just such a vastly complex game.
It is so crazy. So what do you think, how will AI evolve in the future and make an impact on education, for example?
Yeah, as accessible as it's becoming, obviously there are pluses and minuses to that, or advantages and drawbacks, I guess you could say. One of the major advantages of it is that not only are we in the information and internet age now, where even as 20 years ago or so, things like Google and Bing, and you have a lot of information at your fingertips, right? And so a lot of, I guess what you'd say is common knowledge has been on the internet for many years. AI can be used to synthesize some of that information and put it together into a way that makes it a lot more understandable and a lot easier to find what you're looking for. And I don't mean in the sense of searching for what you're looking for, but let's say you put in a search term and there's 157,000 results that come back. Now you've got to suss out which is the information that I really want. And you're scrolling through and you're trying to figure, and you may never find the article. You may lose patience before you get to where you want to go. Sometimes you get right to it. But AI can help with taking different sources and putting the information together in a way that makes it more easily recognizable and understandable to the average person, and especially to the average kid. Right? Because if a kid is looking for something and trying to search on Google, not only can they get very overwhelmed by the results, but then there's some results that you probably don't even want them seeing. There's those elements of it too. And of course, that's where parental guidance comes in and things like that. We're not going to get into all that here. But the point being that AI can be used to hone in and target certain aspects and certain things to show us what we're really looking for, and to try and distill the information into what's really necessary. And coupled with that is the fact that education in general is, of course, moving in a technological way and advancing more and more technologically. And when we hit the pandemic there in 2020, there was a lot of at-home classes and a lot of at-home kids sitting at home and their teachers on Zoom, and everybody's in a Zoom meeting. And that got some mixed results. Okay, there were some students who were into that. There was quite a few who weren't, and it was a struggle, right? And now that AI has come along, there would be, I'm quite certain, heaven forbid we have another incident like that in this world, we're better prepared for it this time, not only by the experience, but also something like AI can help to, again, get the lesson material structured in a way that can benefit kids a lot quicker, I think. And it's a great tool. That's the important thing, I think, to remember also, is that AI is simply a tool, right? It's something that we can use as human beings to help and to educate ourselves and to enhance our lives. But it isn't something that we should put all our eggs in that basket and just decide to go with whatever AI says. There's got to be discretion, right? And that's really what I believe. That's one of the reasons that AI is never really going to take over. I know there are people who fear that AI is going to take over the world. I think there's a couple of things that kind of stand in the way of that. Is number one is human reasoning and, again, discretion. But the biggest thing is people are drawn to each other. We want to be part of something bigger. We like community. We like human interaction. And so there's always going to be that need. That's human nature. We are, ever since the beginning of time, we've been tribal, right? We've been people who we get together and we share experiences with each other. And that's a limitation there that AI, at least at this point that we know it, is not able to make up for. It can do a lot, but it can't replace people in the sense of the human connection and in the sense of the togetherness that human beings crave. And again, that being part of human nature, AI, and maybe someday in the future, long after our lifetimes, it'll get to that point that it can simulate or replicate that. But chatting with an AI chatbot and having it speak to you in a human sort of way is a lot different than getting together with your friends at the dinner table and sharing a few hours together, talking and laughing and enjoying each other's company. So
definitely. Yeah. So you said something really right. So communities are getting more and more important right now because of COVID, because some people at least were really lonely, and they are craving community. And this is why communities grow so much right now. And I think we need a balance there, and maybe I can help us here, because we can outsource specific things to AI and we don't have to worry about it anymore. So we can focus on connection, interpersonal connection. Yeah. I think, I don't know, how do you see the future of education and AI?
Yeah, I think you made a great point there about AI being able to take on some tasks that then free us up to, whether it's time freedom or whether it's mental freedom or whatever it might be, free us up to connect and to build communities and to spend time with each other. I think that education, to be honest, really needs a reform. And I've been saying this for years now, and finally the movement seems to be gaining some steam generally. And that is because if you look at the educational system, at least here in America, and I'm pretty sure worldwide, it's more or less an arena where we learn skills that are meant for the industrial age. That's when it was created. And we're so far gone from the industrial age now. It used to be that you would get into school and you would learn some skills so that you could go work within your local community as a teacher or a firefighter or whatever it may be, or a banker. Nowadays, yes, there's still a need for teachers and firefighters and bankers, don't get me wrong. But the world is so much more interconnected now, where in the industrial age, somebody in New York and somebody in Paris, there was quite a chasm between them in terms of being able to communicate, right? There still is physically, but those barriers have been broken down by the advent of technology and by something like Zoom, for instance, which is a great example of this, is our conversation right here. We're on two different continents and we're able to communicate in real time. And the telephone was part of that as a first sort of step in that direction. But now we're able to, it's almost like the science fiction shows in the 50s and 60s where a little screen pops up and you can see the other person's face. That's what we're living in now. So education as a result is fairly outdated. The world is so connected now, and you have, for instance, money. Money is something that literally used to just exist in terms of coins, and then bills were created. And that now money is pretty much numbers on a screen. And computers are transferring money all the time amongst each other, and it's called money, but it's a bunch of numbers. So things like that, and that's one example, but things like that have just changed so much, and our world has evolved so much that now we need to be teaching different skills in school. We need to be, some of the same skills are still necessary. Of course, you don't want to produce a society of people who can't add 3 + 3. but at the same time, or can't write a sentence. At the same time, however, a lot of the things that we're being trained to do in school, and a lot of the training that's being done and the teaching that's being done is outdated. And that's not the teacher's fault. That's the result of a system that was created hundreds of years ago. And so we just, I think, need a reform in the sense that an update, I guess you'd say. And I think that AI can be very useful in helping us, number one, find the right direction, right? And determine what kinds of things might be more important now, and give us some assistance in that regard. But then also, again, going back to my chess lessons and the way that I teach it is I use AI pretty much every day, because I'm always looking for little fine tunes, little things that I can tweak, little things I can do to teach this or that differently. And then, of course, the chess computer itself, that's AI in action. And I'm using that every day. And these things help to enhance what I'm doing. I feel like they could be used to enhance what education in general is doing. And so I think that the future of education, hopefully, is that we do see some of these changes being made, and that we do see an update in the school systems so that the students are learning skills that are going to apply to our futures, into the not just the 21st century, which we're in, but the 22nd century as well. And future generations, we need to start moving in that direction sooner rather than later, before we wind up being caught so far behind that catching up is even more difficult. I'm looking forward to the future of education, and I think that we can really make some strides in that area. And I think that AI can be a huge help.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how AI will help us with that, but what I actually see too is that we need to change the topics that we teach. So in school, there is nothing taught about finance, how we manage our money, nothing about communication, how to communicate in the right way, not about relationships. It's all about facts and figures. And we all have facts and figures at our fingertips on the internet. We don't need to learn by heart some dates in history. We need to understand what happened and maybe be prepared to have some things not happen again, for example. So that is what we need to teach. And
interpreting the facts.
Yes.
And being able to take advantage of using that information. And that is something that I think AI can be useful for, is again, to help us assimilate and make sense of some things. But you're right. Yeah, the subject, and this would probably be a very fascinating thing to look at in terms of AI, is to ask it, hey, name, I don't know, you could, when I say name, I'm talking about us now, but, name some of the most successful people you can think of, right? And put some of those names into AI and say, hey, take a look at these people, these personalities that are well-known, successful people, and help me figure out what are the things that these people have in common. What are their philosophies? What are their worldviews? What do they do that separates them from other people? And AI may be able to help us synthesize that information. I don't know, I've never tried that experiment, but it just came to mind, so I figured I'd mention it.
Yes.
But something like that, some way that now we have the ability to not just make it up in our own mind and decide what we think and then try and teach that to people as if it were, I hate to use the word fact, but as if it were reality. But we have a tool now that can help point us in maybe a right direction, and then talk about it with some other people and get a collaborative effort going to distill that information. And that's just one idea, again, off the top of my head here. But I think that there are uses like that where we can take and look at, okay, if these things are important and we can get some people to agree that, yes, the AI machine is right about this and this, maybe this not so much, maybe this other one, but these three things here, now we can take these three things and we can go, okay, how do we get that knowledge to kids? How do we change schools so that is the knowledge that we're imparting? And how can we dive deeper into these three things to figure out what needs to be taught in order to get there? Work backwards and reverse engineer it. Again, ideas, right? I'm just sprouting ideas here, but I'm not recommending or advocating anybody do this, okay? Just to be clear, disclaimer, But I do think that that's a useful starting point, perhaps. And maybe somebody else listening to this right now might have a better idea or an improvement or a tweak on it that would be make it more useful. Again, though, this takes human collaboration, right? It takes people, and it takes reasoning and logic, and it takes critical thinking, and it takes discussion. It takes growth mindsets, right? Being open-minded and not being dogmatic about what you think, and understanding that there are different viewpoints and that it's okay to be wrong. One of the things you touched on is that education is all about facts, right? And so we grow up, and what do we do from the time we're 4, 5, 6 years old until the time we're 18? And then if we go on to college, it's 22, 23. So we're talking at least 12 to 15 years of our lives where pretty much every single day of our life, the goal and the focus is to be right. And there are consequences to being wrong. And not the kind of consequences like, hey, I learned something, which is a consequence of being wrong. If you are willing to look at what you did and examine it and figure out, okay, that's okay that I did this, and here's what I'm going to do differently next time. But consequences like you get lower grades, and your teachers now want to put you on academic probation and all these things because you weren't right often enough. And so what that produces then is people who come out of college and get into their 20s and into their 30s, and they just need to be right all the time. And the need to be right trumps everything else, because that's what was pounded in and ingrained into them for so many years. And working out that idea that it's okay to be wrong, and we don't have to be right all the time. And it's okay to not only be wrong, or however you want to, whatever terminology you want to use. I'm saying right and wrong because, again, that's what we talked about when it comes to education. But again, this is something people carry with them for many years after, a lot of people. And I did too. Yeah, of course. I think it's natural, again, because, well, I don't know if it's natural, but it's ingrained in us, right? It's taught that whole time. But getting to that point and realizing that you don't have to be right all the time, and there are as many different viewpoints and angles as there are people, and being willing to accept that maybe your view and maybe your ideas aren't the only way, and there are possibilities outside of what you currently perceive and outside of what you currently believe. And I think that's a huge step that we can take as people that, again, AI is very limited to. So it's going to take people working together and collaborating and understanding this idea that it doesn't necessarily have to be this way because it's always been that way. We can change things, and we can work together to do that.
Yeah, so that is important. So that is another thing that school doesn't teach us. So getting feedback and learning from it is one that you just mentioned. And then that we can work together. In school, it's always against. So we want to be better than the other person, and at least be better, seen better if we are or not.
Yeah, I'll never forget, speaking of that, in college, I was a computer science major for a while, and had a basic computer science course, but I had been programming as a hobby since I was in like 4th grade. I was a kid, 9, 10 years old. I was writing programs in BASIC. And so here we are, fast forward to 2000, I think it was 2002 or so, that I was in a computer science class, and we were learning, it was Java programming. And I already knew that too. Programming was a hobby for me. So it was a very easy class for me, but it was something I had to take for part of my degree, right? There was a student in the class who kind of was struggling, and I offered to help. I said, hey, I can help you understand this. So we worked together so that I could help them understand what was going on. And then we got our papers back from the professor in that following week, and we both got Fs because we copied each other.
Oh, no.
And I said, this is so backwards. I taught this person how to do this, and it came out the same or very similar because we worked on it together. But to your point, like, it's very individual. You're not supposed to work together in school, right? And it's frowned upon by some professors. That kind of blew me away. But that's, again, to your point, exactly what we're talking about here. Is it's not a collaborative effort in a lot of cases. In most schools, it's a competitive environment instead of cohesive and collaborative.
Yeah. So I could talk about this forever, I think. It's
Me
one of
too,
my
obviously.
favorite objects or topics. Yeah. Anything that you want to share with my audience before we close that we haven't touched on?
I think just to say that, again, I guess we touched on a little bit ago, but to close with just the idea that AI is nothing to be afraid of, all right?
Yes.
It is something that is a tool that we can use to enhance what we do. And it's just that, it's a tool. So it's not to be trusted. As we know, AI can fabricate things and can make things up. And sometimes when I work with it, it gets really off track and I just close it and restart. And it needs to be trained. And there's still a lot of limitations with AI. It is a tool and it is something that you can use, but it is not something to just be trusted as the end all be all. And it certainly is not anything that in our lifetimes is going to take over the world. There are human beings standing in the way of that. And again, humans crave connection. And so I just would encourage anybody and everybody listening to make connections with people, build relationships. That's the essence of life. And that's really, as far as I'm concerned, the key element to humanity is having those connections and finding people that you can build relationships with. And AI is just never going to be able to do that.
Okay, Rob, where can my audience get in touch with you? Where can we find more about you?
Yeah, the website that I have is my company is called Kids and Chess. And I specifically say it with the N instead of and. I don't say kids and chess because that's not really what it's called. It's Kids and Chess, and I use the little ampersand in my logo as and the website is KIDSNCHES. So Kids and Chess, again, in line with how I say it. So www.kidsandchess.com, and my email address there is learn@kidsandchess.com. So LEARN, the word learn. So you can find out more there about what I do. You can inquire about chess lessons. I've just launched a new online academy. It's called Chess Quest Academy. I'm very excited for that. And it's a large interactive bit of videos and live lessons. And I do one-on-one coaching through that program as well. There's a lot to take in with regards to that. And people can find out more information through me or through the website.
Wow, that's congratulations. That's huge. So thank you. And thank you for being on my show. I really enjoyed this session again, and I hope to see you soon again on my show.
I hope so too, Dagmar. Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure speaking with you and being here, and I'm really happy we could make this happen. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Streamline Success Show. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, and to get access to today's show notes, head over to community.marketingunraveled.com. See you on the next episode.